Hello, everyone. Welcome to another second part of this particular episode. This is TJ, and I'm here with David Frank, and we're also here with our friend, Reverend Zach. So, there's been an evolution in Zach's story over the past approximately 9 months ago. So, we recorded with Zach in February 2025, but he's had some pretty substantial life changes in that subsequent period from then until currently it's October 2025. So, Zach, could you tell us what have been some of these large changes in life in the past 9 months?
Sure. So in February, when you guys met me, I was beginning my descent at my curacy on Long Island. I had a 2 year contract, and that came to a close in effectively July of 2025. August was my kind of official vacation time. So I would say my last Sunday there was the last Sunday in July, and that was always the plan. That was always going to be it. So yeah, I was also in the midst back in February of a CPE residency. CPE, for those who don't know, is clinical pastoral education. That is hospital chaplaincy, effectively. I was in the middle of my residency, which garnered me 3 more units to bring it up to 4 units of CPE, which is really great to have when you're a reverend, when you want to go into chaplaincy. It was, I don't want to say the time of my life, but it was, because that makes it sound fun. It was a beautiful experience. That came to a close in June of 2025, and so both were happening kind of concurrently. My last year on Long Island. Um, Usually for a priest in the Episcopal Church, that lasts, let's say, months, maybe 8, maybe like 9 to 6 months. You should be looking for a job. Actually, it's almost you're doing your pastoring, but if you have a contract and kind of your first call, you're you're kind of you're kind of able to recognize, okay, this is the time I need to start looking for a job. I'm looking for, or not just a job, another call. That's what we call it in the Episcopal Church. You are called by whatever kind of congregation you apply to, and they accept you, and you accept them, and it's a mutual agreement. And I was really discerning, really praying, really thinking about my place in the Episcopal Church. I loved my 2 years on Long Island. I fell in love with so many people, so many places. They truly affirmed me for being a really good pastor, a good teacher, a good, just a good friend to this community, to this both the church and the community, of Huntington, where I was staying, where I was ministering. So that all caused me, to think like, okay, well, what do I do? Where do I go? I am not one to hide away from my convictions. I was voted most opinionated in high school. I do not suffer fools. Now, I don't want to be brutally honest, of course not, but I have this conviction. And I talked about in the first part, and that is something that I truly believe in, and that I have to kind of defend at the same time. And so in the Episcopal Church, what I was running up against was, there's these job sites we can go to, and what I was running up against is a lot of what the Episcopal Church stands for. And I'm not going to name any name churches, I can't remember any of them, but a lot of times on these descriptions for priests, you'll see inclusive, progressive, affirming. I would say probably 8, 9 times out of 10, that is the church in the Episcopal, that is any church in the Episcopal Church nowadays. And what I was kind of running up against is putting in my application, putting in my resume, and either having I realized I faced one of two choices. I could be upfront about what I believed, and how I expressed that, and how I lived, and how I deal with the sacraments, or I could just not tell them at all and see how far I can get away with it. Well, I almost want to, rhetorical question: which one has more integrity? I knew I had to be upfront about this. I knew I couldn't lie to these people. I wasn't going to go to, a self-described progressive, inclusive, affirming church and then suddenly say, "No, I'm sorry, I can't marry a same-sex couple." And that is effectively the future I could see. And then that church being really mad at me and trying to get me out of there. And that is exactly what would have happened. And that's fine. That's their prerogative. The Episcopal Church has, I don't want to say every right to, but if this is the route they wish to take, then that's the route they're taking. And now, so that's kind of broadly the Episcopal Church. Then you have certain dioceses that are still traditional, still hold to traditional sexual ethics. And so that's, we can name them because they know it. That's Central Florida, that's Springfield, Illinois, that's Dallas, Texas. There might be like a couple more, but those are like the big three. And then you have a diocese like Albany, which is coming out from a lot of church hurt from their previous bishop that really hurt them. And they're moving towards a more affirming stance, regardless. And then I had to look at the Episcopal Church and say, how fair is it? We like to, in Anglicanism, we like to talk about this big tent. There's this big tent. We all live under it, and we all get to live happily ever after. And I just don't see that. I don't see that being the case. I see kind of being politely told, well, you should look at these other places because they can be more friendly to your stance. So then it makes me feel like I'm in this big tent, but I can only sit at a few tables. And those are the tables I have to resign myself to. And I don't want to say resign. There's nothing wrong with Central. I love the bishop there. I've driven through Dallas. It seems like a wonderful city. And Albany, upstate New York, is the closest to God I probably have ever experienced in nature. It's a beautiful part of the country. But I did not feel particularly called to those places. I am by birth a Midwesterner, by adoption a New Yorker. Like, I tell this to people that when I was like a kid or a teenager, I didn't pray the gay away. I prayed the suburbs away. I was just like, I want to live on the Upper West Side. Why is this? Why did I live in Detroit, the auto capital of the world, on a main street, a busy street, full of cars? What is this, God? What kind of sick joke is this? Anyways, that's a different story for another time. And what happened on Long Island was that there was no jobs. There was no real kind of future for me there immediately. And so I just said, you know what? I got to go home. And that's where I'm at now. And yes, TJ, you said I'm the Reverend Zachary, and I kind of cringed. I don't know if you saw that. Maybe I didn't really cringe, but in my head I cringed. Only because I don't know what to do with it anymore. Like, technically, yes, I am still a priest in the Episcopal Church. And I have to tell my bishop something soon. But what I feel right now towards the Episcopal Church is a bit of disillusionment with it all. With, let's just be honest, with all our welcome, the big tent, the definitely, it's kind of, we can hold all this tension together when I don't know, because what keeps coming back to me, truthfully, is a house divided cannot stand. And so what I see is this house that is divided, and especially in global Anglicanism, right? We're coming off 2 weeks since the Archbishop of Canterbury debacle, or we're still in it technically. And it just proves to me that a house divided cannot stand, and we have to face the facts that this is not going the way Christians should be going. As much as a lot of Protestantism is full of schism, this doesn't look good on paper. Now, the progressives will say, the liberals and progressives will say, well, we're fine. We've got all our ducks in a row. And they do. It's true. But they need to be more explicit. And what they don't the big critique I'll give towards that camp right now is that they are just as dogmatic in their theology and their doctrine and practice as any conservative is. And I don't think they want to admit it. I don't think because what a lot of progressives, I was once a progressive and I came out of this heavily dogmatic Catholic kind of environment. And so that's what they left. And they don't want to sound dogmatic, but they are. Because for me in my story, I don't know how easy that is to accept. Oh, you're saying you were a gay man who left a same-sex relationship because he felt convicted that was sinful. That's not the narrative of the Episcopal Church, and they don't want to hear it. They want to hear how much I love myself, how much I have a great husband or something like that. They don't want to hear you're picking up your cross, you're denying the flesh, But that's all old ancient words. Why do you have to do this? So yeah, it's that's where I'm at now. It's it yeah it I there's a lot of things I need to be honest with myself about my sexuality, about my faith, about what is true and what is not. You know, if I want to be Catholic about it, the magisterium, Christendom, it's been repeated, and it's been, I think a lot of progressives love to argue, oh, well, this is all new to us. This is all, post-Freudian, post-Foucault understanding of sexuality. And I'm reading ancient second, third, fourth century Christian authors, and they're all saying they're not using the word homosexual, but they're saying, yeah, gay sex is sin. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like the greatest line, brothers in France, or no, brothers in Gaul do not get married. They don't get married to each other is what the author was saying. And I just thought that was like, okay, so we actually have dealt with this before, and it's been just kind of assumed for thousands of years. But we're living in an age of postmodernism, of deep kind of Romans 1 regression. Did God really say that is the question of the day. And I don't I I'm just I'm worried we forgot who first said that, in the Bible. So,
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing, Zach. That's a hard place to where like, oh, you're reaching your conclusions. I have some resonating things with tensions in my own denomination. Like, oh, that's in the doctrinal standards. I
yeah.
don't know if that quite fits. What does that mean? I'm curious. This is just a quick tangent question. In St. Paul, right across the river, there's two Episcopal churches within a mile of each other, and one fits the general model that you said of just inclusive, affirming, would support, celebrate, officiate a gay marriage. And my understanding is that the other, what, um, like, does the congregation, that's kind of not like
It's
congregation by congregation,
it's
or
definitely it's uh so like in, let's say, the 90% of Episcopal dioceses that are pretty much liberal, affirming, progressive. But usually, like, every of those dioceses has at least one church that is traditional. One or two churches. Now, there's about maybe 100 or so Episcopal dioceses, and so when each diocese, when like 95 of those dioceses only have one or two traditional churches, that's less than 100 of these churches in existence. And to be quite honest, they're dying out. I mean, because the denomination is dying out. It's just not sustainable. Now you have dioceses like Central Florida and Dallas that are if not growing, they're at least stable and full of active churchgoers who are traditional in their understandings of not just human sexuality, but of certainly many social issues, but also biblical interpretation and the role of the priest, and you could even say the gender of the priest. So, and I don't know if this is where you were going, but I was thinking of it earlier. It's like, okay, then how do these churches stay in the Episcopal Church, or how do they fit in the Episcopal Church? And they're relegated basically to second class citizenship. They're not really allowed to. I mean, they'll pay their dues. It's fine, but for the most part, they're not big enough to have any sort of big sway in the Episcopal Church. There's not enough of them to sit on committees, to sit on task forces, and to have any sort of voice to say, hey, don't do this. Now, when you have entire dioceses like Central Florida and Dallas, let's say, that do have these voices, it's still hard to then kind of change anything about the church at General Convention. Because, again, you're dealing with much more, 10 times more liberal progressive voices than the conservative ones left in the Episcopal Church. I genuinely believe that liberals and progressives, when they say all are welcome, all are welcome. But definitely, if you try to say, well, I don't know if that's true, or that doesn't sound biblically accurate or biblically faithful, you'll be shut down. It's totally, you might be listened to, and oh, that's a nice opinion, but that's not what we believe, and so we're not going to deal. And I wouldn't even say, someone might say it's a hardness of heart. I just think and that may well be the case. I had this hardness of heart. I was in a same-sex relationship. I've also kind of told this to people where I sound like St. Paul, where he's like, I'm a Benjaminite by birth. I was a Pharisee by the law. Like, I know what I did it. I was part of that. I persecuted Christians. And so I kind of say that. I was, I voted for Obama twice. I celebrated the day Obergefell v. Hodges was passed. I read that. I read whatever justice it was at my wedding. Like, I know, I lived this experience. And how idolatrous it was for me to even read that at my wedding, which was at a church. Like, I'll say that, right? That is definitely I don't say a minor sin, but definitely a sin of mine, is having this being read at my church, something that has nothing to do with Christian marriage now. Yeah, so you're just kind of ignored. You're just, we like them because they might, instill us with some certain spirituality that Anglicanism is known for. So in Detroit, I'll be blunt. In Detroit, there's a parish that still uses the 28 prayer book. That's great. It's a beautiful liturgy. But for a lot of people, it's like this museum piece. This is all just it's a beautiful archaic replica or relic of the past. But now it's the 21st century, so we have to innovate our liturgies, and we have to have all these things, and we get to write our own liturgies apparently now, and it's and I wouldn't even say a lot of, I'll give the benefit of the doubt, there are a lot of liberals and progressives that do love this ancient or even just like Elizabethan kind of 28 prayer book kind of, but at the same time it doesn't maybe this is a way of saying it doesn't convict them the way they might need to be convicted, and that's yeah, I've actually never said it like that before. And I'm thinking of the fact that, we might say the Nicene Creed together over and over again every Sunday. But what do the words mean to each of us? If you're saying you're progressive and I'm saying, well, no, Jesus Christ will come to judge the living and the dead. So what are you doing about that? And what does that look like? I don't know. And it some of it did come down to definitely what is the question is, what is the gospel? What really is the gospel?
Yeah. I just started a book group on John Mark Comer's practicing the way, following the way. What's it called, TJ?
Practicing
the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very first thing is just challenging what people actually have been told a lot of what the gospel is, and turns out it requires obedience and turning around. Obviously you're still very much figuring things out. You have conversations ahead of you. From where your current standpoint is, what vision do you see for life and vocation in the next chapter of life, or what potential visions?
Yeah. Let's see, I could be concrete about this. I could be kind of more abstract. I'm someone that finds meaning in everything. I don't believe in coincidences. There is meaning in everything. And so nothing I've done in the past, let's say 15 years that I've been in the Episcopal Church, just about, I regret. I've loved so much of it. And so much of it has also caused me great frustration. And that's even before seminary. So it's not as if like seminary did anything to me necessarily. So it's been this great ride, this great thing. And yet at the heart of it, I found meaning. There is meaning in life. Nothing is a coincidence. And that is, I have to be intentional about that going forward. That how I live into my ministry, whatever that looks like, needs to be meaningful for me and not just kind of fly by night. A more kind of concrete thing is how much I was affirmed as being a teacher in my priesthood. I loved First Communion class, Bible studies, adult education, and my sermons were a lot of teaching sermons. People really resonated with that. They really felt they took something away from my sermons. And so this is something that I think I've known for a long time, that I should have been a teacher. And so that's what I'm kind of going towards now, is into education. What that looks like, I don't know yet. I could say theology. I would love to be a theology teacher. That'd be great. It's just not that easy,
Mm-hmm.
especially,
Mm-hmm.
when you're not a
Mm-hmm.
Catholic and you're not like, right, you're not a Catholic, and then for like the classical Christian schools, you don't feel learned enough because you don't know Greek and Latin and you didn't graduate from
Mm-hmm.
Hillsdale. So so
Okay.
whatever that looks like, I will forge ahead and have a good time with it.
Hmm. Great. Okay. Yeah. Maybe a final question. What do you think this sort of means for the side B life that you've been trying to live in the last chapter?
Yeah, it. Gosh, how do I? It. I. Not. I'm still convinced. Right. There's nothing. There's nothing shaking me from this
Mm-hmm.
conviction.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say it's still. It's still a. It's almost a decision I have to like make every single day. It's still a. It's difficult. It's really difficult. And that isn't, because of any kind of, I mean, right, we all have sexual needs, but it is based on kind of like loneliness and this desire for companionship and kind of to be seen by someone. I love going to the airport. It's like the weird
Yeah.
thing about me. I love airports. But like I rarely ever get to go with somebody. In all my
Yeah.
travels, I haven't really gone and
Mm-hmm.
even my ex and I never flew together. So there is still this desire. I'm open. I have always said to God, I'm open, but if it's with a woman, it needs to be perfectly clear because I'm just not good with that. And if it's with a man, I kind of, I don't want to scare any listeners out there that are still trying to understand side B. Just companionship in Christ, to have someone on the
Mm-hmm.
same, either man or a woman, on the same level, on the same understanding, the same page, I should say, of my relationship, of a relationship with Christ, of going to church every Sunday, of Bible study, of prayer, of good works, of kind of allowing our friendship or our marriage to be one that points towards Jesus. And so whatever that looks like, I think there's still a season I have to go through that I am single or that I am kind of on my own, and that's I will try my best. But it's still, yeah, it's still there. The conviction is still there, and it's not. I don't see it really going away, and I don't think it would. I mean, the scales fell from my eyes. They're not gonna. I don't. I don't see them being plastered back on.
I think was probably you who introduced me to William
Right, it probably
Stringfellow,
was.
his book of Simplicity of
Yeah,
Faith. And so I ordered it, and I've read at least most of it, and was just moved by the story of becoming friends with Anthony.
yeah,
Anthony, right?
yep,
He said, like, we were acquaintances, and then we became friends, and then we became community.
yeah,
And I just, yeah, haven't seen someone articulate friendship in that way, and it seemed to invoke not just the intimacy, but also like the presence of God in their relationship.
yeah, definitely.
So thank you for that
Of course,
recommendation. It's been
yeah,
good to read that, and yeah, it's just great to see more models of how people are building companionship, meaningful community into their
for
lives.
sure.
Yeah, come to Revoice someday. Maybe next year or the coming
Yeah,
years.
and it's only
We can talk more about these things.
for
So,
sure.
yeah.
I only haven't gone because the last 2 Julys I've had to work. Like that was always
Oh yeah.
the last 2 Julys, and before that I really was just getting new into Side B World, so
Mm-hmm.
I really couldn't go.
Yeah.
Well, you're always welcome to come visit Minnesota. We have
Thank you.
a good little bee crew here.
Good, good. Yeah, I just got back to Michigan, and I've met the Revoice chapter here in Ann Arbor, and even got to go to dinner
Sweet.
at a couple's house, which was great. So, yeah,
Nice. That's good. Cool. Yeah, well, thank you so much, Zach. We loved getting this
thank you.
update. I love hearing how you have been thinking about this chapter of life and even the next chapter. And we pray that God can bless you as you keep walking in this
Yeah.
path.
Thank you. You
Yeah.
guys too. Same. Prayers ascending
Yeah, thank you.
for this, definitely.